Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. NATO's been attacked. Not really, but 3 Russian Shahed drones did strike inside Romania, causing a fire. Russian drones struck targets in Romania on July 24th, 7 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. I can show you where this is on the map. Here's the Ukrainian port city of Izmail, and since the grain deal collapsed last year, Russia's been consistently bombing the city, and occasionally their drones and missiles go off course and hit this wooded area inside Romania. There is a video showing where the drone struck, and there's not much to see, not much to show. It just hit some trees in the wood. And I know people's reaction when they see this, when they hear this. Here's what this man has to say from Germany. The Russians are receiving valuable information. The most important, NATO is not reacting. And I just want to make the counter arguments that NATO is reacting every single day. Every time a NATO country provides military aid or financial aid to Ukraine, that is the response from NATO for these kinds of provocations. Now, is NATO going to bomb Russia or declare war because some NATO trees were burnt? No, that's not going to happen. But yes, this is a serious problem, and I don't know why Romania didn't shoot these down. Why were they allowed to enter Romanian airspace and get 7 kilometers deep? I also want to say NATO is probably grateful that a wooded area was hit and not the city of Izmail. No Ukrainians died. No infrastructure was damaged. If Russia wants to waste their drones and missiles blowing up some trees in the woods, this is actually NATO's preferred option. The number of Russian invaders in Ukraine has surged to 520,000, according to General Syrskyi. The commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces disclosed that Russia's occupying troops have grown from 100,000 at the onset of the war to now 520,000. And that's just Russian soldiers inside Ukraine, not including the support staff on the other side of the border. So how can Russia maintain such a large army when it looks pretty bad on the internet? All these drone drop videos of Russian soldiers dying horrifically. This is on Telegram. Russians have to be seeing these videos. So to entice Russian men to continue signing contracts, Moscow is ready to pay their residents 21,000 equivalents US dollars for signing up to join the army. The mayor of Moscow has signed a decree on July 23rd establishing a one-time signing bonus of 1.9 million rubles, equal to about 21,200 US dollars. While the regional authorities have instituted signing bonuses such as Krasnodar, 1 million rubles, Dagestan, 500,000 rubles, the Moscow signing bonus appears to be the highest reported so far. So this is Putin's power base. The elites live in Moscow and St. Petersburg. It's their children, it's their nephews, and rather than mobilize or conscript them, they're trying to entice them with money. But this is an insane amount of money for the average Russian. And to put this in perspective, a Russian soldier from Moscow would be receiving more money than a US soldier who just joins, for example, the Army or the Marines. And on top of that, this now means that a soldier from Moscow is making more than the average salary of an American. So when you add their yearly salary plus this sign-up bonus, it equals 5.2 million rubles, or about 60,000 US dollars. This is an insane amount of money. So let me show you the pay chart for a US soldier. If you wanted to enlist and join the Army or the Marines, you come in as an E1 with less than 2 years experience. Your base pay is $2,000. It does go up pretty quickly when you rank to E2 or E3. Once you're in E3 with over 2 years, you're making $2,500. Once you're an E4 staff sergeant in the Air Force, you're making close to $3,000. But the standard of living, the cost of living between the United States and Russia, huge contrast. So these are the lengths. This is what Putin is willing to do, dipping into the wealth fund of Russia, hundreds of billions of dollars, to keep this war going, despite Russia's horrendous losses. And at the same time, Putin says there is no extra money. At a meeting with the head of the accounts chamber, Putin said, "There's no extra money, so financial discipline must be scrupulously monitored." Putin has appointed the son of his closest associate and confidant to head the accounts chamber. So I have to read this clip. To me, this is just very amusing. Here's what Putin says. "But there is no extra money. Therefore, I am counting on you to monitor financial discipline with the utmost care, and certainly not to miss anything criminal." This is what this is all about. Stop the hemorrhaging, stop the corruption. But Putin has a serious problem, because you can fight corruption in a democracy. But in a dictatorship, corruption is not a bug, it's a feature of the program. A dictator can only stay in power by paying off the members of his coalition, and he does that through bribery, through looking the other way when people steal money or extort money from the commoners. Putin's trying to crack down on this, but this only weakens his grip on power in Russia. We have a direct line of communication. In the most acute cases, do not hesitate to call me. Meaning he put the child of this confidant in charge of the money, the treasury, and he's saying, if you see anybody loyal to me stealing during a time of war, let me know. And I can have him arrested or, serve him some tea. Ukrainian forces defend in encirclement as Russia advances in the Donetsk Oblast. So this is for the map update, people. I'm not much of a map update guy every time a field is taken, but people at the moment are concerned about this pocket that is formed. The Russians are trying to reach this road. That's their primary objective in the Donbas region. So this road connects the city of Pokrovsk to Chasiv Yar, and this is a supply road that comes from Dnipro. If the Russians can reach this road, it's not the end of the world, but you'll notice on the map there's not a whole lot out here. So for supplies to get to Chasiv Yar, they're going to have to divert, go north to Izium, and then down through Sloviansk. So I hope the Ukrainian defenders in this pocket, this has people concerned. I hope they can either be withdrawn or saved. I do think Russia is going to continue gobbling up these fields. And this is a calculation. I know people get frustrated and they hate seeing the Russians advance. But it's all about time and it's all about a cost. What is Ukraine's military willing to trade for Russian losses? If this single wheat field here, or whatever it is traded for 20 armored vehicles and 30 Russian soldiers, that's a good trade. I understand, yes, the Russians are advancing, but their resources aren't infinite. Eventually, Russia's going to run out. Eventually, Russia's going to collapse. So Ukraine is allowing them to slightly advance if they're willing to take heavy losses. This is the trade. I understand there's some heroic Ukrainian defenders in this region still losing their lives. Ukraine is doing everything to protect them. They're giving them the resources they need to defend. But when it comes to meat wave attacks and glide bombs, if the Russians throw enough metal and men at a field, they will take that field. But their resources are not infinite. Eventually, Russia is going to exhaust itself, and they're never taking the city of Pokrovsk. They're never taking Chasiv Yar. They're never taking Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. It's just about buying time until the Russians run out of resources. Battle for Pokrovsk is tense and difficult. Russian losses are 3 times higher. Every time the Russians advance, they also have to waste artillery destroying every building, destroying every piece of infrastructure. This has a cost, and Russia's resources are not infinite. But it is having an impact on the morale. As we're now 2.5 years into this horrible war, the Ukrainians are tough, but even the Ukrainians know they can't go forever either. Number of Ukrainians open to territorial concessions rises, but majority still opposes, according to a poll. This is a recent KIIS survey, and it reveals a gradual but significant shift in Ukrainian public opinion. So here's the bar chart going back to, I don't know what month that is in 2022, but the orange is, are you ready to achieve peace by possibly giving up territory? The orange is yes, the blue is no, the gray is unsure. And what's interesting, it was higher, the first two surveys, but then it decreased after the Kharkiv offensive and the liberation of the city of Kherson. But we can tell, over the last year and a half, as the front lines have more or less remained solid, that this is increasing. 32% of Ukrainians are now in favor of territorial concessions in order to end this war. And all I can say is I'm not Ukrainian, I don't get a vote. If President Zelensky feels like he needs to hold a referendum on peace talks, a referendum on territorial concessions, I'll respect the will of the majority of people who would vote in that referendum. And I don't get a vote. So this is up to the Ukrainians how eventually they want to end this war. And we've got more talk on the diplomatic front. Kuleba to the Chinese foreign minister. Kyiv is open to negotiate with Russia if Moscow is ready to do so in good faith. So Kuleba went to China for a diplomatic visit. This is important. And he did say this, that they're open to talks if Russia is serious. But he also said the Russians aren't serious. They're blowing up children's hospitals in Kyiv. So no, I don't think the Russians are serious about wanting peace at this point. But in 6 months, a lot can change politically, and in 6 months the Russians might actually be serious or desperate. The Ukrainians themselves might not be in the perfect situation. There might be a compromise of some kind, and it would be great if the Chinese could nudge the Russians in that direction. But how can you talk to the Russians? How can you negotiate with them and offer territorial concessions for peace after everything they've done? All the war crimes. Every day it's just one horror after another. I have to share this headline. Russia is returning Ukrainian POWs' bodies without their internal organs. Prisoners of war bodies are returning to Ukraine, showing evidence that they've been used for transplants in Russia. Something tells me that these Ukrainian POWs did not die of natural causes and then their organs were harvested. They were murdered by the Russians and then the Russians took their organs. Just when you think, once again, your opinion of Russians couldn't get any lower, this is what they do. So let's get to the bad news for Russia. Mi-28 attack helicopter crashes in the Kaluga region. The crew perished. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the preliminary cause of the accident was a technical malfunction. Deputy head of a Russian military unit injured in a car blast in Moscow. A car belonging to a senior Russian military satellite communications officer exploded in Moscow on Wednesday, severely injuring him and a passenger. There's video online. This was captured by CCTV. And we've got video of the perpetrator placing the bomb under the car. And then we've also got the video of the car exploding. If you want to see this for yourself, I'll link it down below, but there's definitely some partisan activity happening even in the capital city of Moscow. Russian arrested over destabilization plot for the Paris Olympics. French police on Tuesday arrested a Russian man suspected of plotting acts of destabilization during the Paris Olympics. The source said an investigation was opened into passing intelligence to a foreign power in order to arouse hostilities in France. This crime is punishable up to 30 years in jail. So the Paris Olympics begin tomorrow. July 26. I hope for peace. The purpose of the Olympics is supposed to be peace. But with the Russians, they're pretty salty about not being there. I think they were already in trouble for cheating in the Olympics 8 years ago, so I don't know if they were allowed to fly their flag anyways. But just 15 Russian athletes will compete in Paris, and apparently only 36 were invited. Half of them declined. Same thing with Belarus. They're participating under a neutral flag, but there still will be lots of Russians with dual citizenship who are competing under different nations' flags. It's the Olympics. People just want to compete in these sports, these events. We just got to get through it, and I hope there's no agitators. I hope there's no Russian saboteurs looking to make a statement at the event. Moscow Square of Europe has been renamed to the Square of Eurasia. So this is a city center area in Moscow, and it was titled the Square of Europe with all the European flags. And the Russians renamed it to the Square of Eurasia, and I'm guessing they are not flying the British or French flag anymore. We've got some crazy videos I want to quick share with you of Russians protesting. If you remember going back to winter, there were all these utility failures under the extreme cold. And Russia's not really doing any better under extreme heat. Lots of utility failures and ordinary citizens upset. They don't have electricity, they don't have air conditioning, and for a lot of Russians, they don't even have running water. So here's a protest. This is actually in the streets of Donetsk. Women are blocking traffic due to lack of electricity and clean drinking water. Now, I will say these women, most of them were once Ukrainian citizens, and they'll probably be Ukrainian citizens again. But there's still other videos I can show you inside of Russia. This man is from the Krasnodar Krai region, and he's complaining about the temperature outside being 40 degrees Celsius, but his air conditioning doesn't work. I'm not going to read this one, but I'll link it down below if you want to see what he says for yourself. It's the usual stuff. Vladimir Putin, please help us. But this video I do want to read for you. These are women in Russia's Stavropol region, and they're appealing a video to Putin because they don't have clean drinking water, and they've not had clean drinking water for weeks. This is what they say. Dear Putin, residents of the village of Kelbny in the district of Stavropol appeal to you. We've had no water for 2 weeks. We have no water anywhere at all. There is no reservoir water, which should be in case of a fire. We will all just burn. We appealed to the water company. They told us that everything is dilapidated. There's no funding. There is a supply of drinking water, but it is very muddy, dirty, and it stinks of chlorine. There is technical water, but they give us only 200 liters of it and 50 liters of drinking water, which is very little. There is not enough technical water even for the farm, and the wells have run out of water. There is nowhere to get it. How can we survive in this situation? What should we do? Why are we people left to extinction in such arid areas? Doesn't anyone care about us? Why have they allowed this to happen? They've brought water that's undrinkable. It's brown, it stinks. We asked, is it drinkable? We were told yes. Who would drink such water? No one. We can't wash our children, cook, bathe, do laundry. We can't breathe because of the heat, and we are deprived of water. Eventually, these Russian people have to connect the dots that the reason they can't cook, bathe, or drink clean drinking water is because their dictator launched an unnecessary war and is diverting all wealth and resources towards a genocide, just to kill Ukrainians. That's why they don't have clean drinking water. in the summer heat. I have to believe they're so close to getting this, guys. Russia deliberately slowed down YouTube to punish Google, State Duma deputy confirms. This is hilarious. YouTube will load up to 40% slower on desktop computers in Russia by the end of this week, and up to 70% slower by the end of next week. This is the Russian government preparing their people for YouTube being completely blocked in September, so they're throttling the bandwidth speed first so that everyone has a bad experience, and then they're going to block it in September. I've never been to Russia, but I have to believe that Russians are like every other people in the world who have had YouTube the last 20 years. And I don't know how I would live without YouTube. YouTube is my entertainment, it's my teacher. Obviously, it's my job now. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of Russians unhappy about this when it finally happens in September. Okay, this was a historic address from President Biden. Biden addresses the nation and promises to work to stop Putin in his last 6 months in office. So Joe Biden is 100% leaving office in January. I know a lot of people hate Jake Sullivan, and I guarantee you Jake Sullivan will not be part of the next administration. He's going to go do something else. Kamala Harris will bring in different and new people. We still have to see who she picks as her vice president, but it's going to be a new cast of characters making these decisions about the war in Ukraine. But I just want to say, as an American, I'm proud of my president for giving up power. He's the president, and he did win the nomination process. He had the delegates. You can argue the Democratic Party forced him out, but he could have said no. He could have fought it. But he wants to win. He wants to see Kamala Harris. He wants to see the Democrats defeat Donald Trump. So he was willing to step aside, and at age 82, he will be retiring in January. So that's the Democrats. Russian State TV seems oddly focused on JD Vance and Donald Trump's pick. I have to quick mention the story, it's so absurd, but the Associated Press declared that JD Vance did not have sex with a couch in a fact-checked article. So somebody on the internet started this rumor that JD Vance had sex with a couch, and it's Twitter, it's the internet, so people are having fun. And the Associated Press put out an article fact-checking it. Well, obviously, the Trump campaign didn't appreciate that, so the Associated Press took down the fact-check article. I don't believe that JD Vance has ever had sex with a couch, but that's what everyone on the internet is now saying. And when people dig into JD Vance, it kind of just gets weirder and weirder. How JD Vance went from thinking he was gay and changing his name twice to be an anti-LGBTQ extremist. So I didn't know this, but apparently in Vance's memoir, he revealed an anecdote about his childhood belief that he was gay. Influenced by a preacher's condemnation of homosexuality, young Vance feared he was destined for hell simply because he disliked girls and cherished his friendship with another boy. Okay. Vance's opposition to affirming one's identity is complicated by his decision to change his name. Not once, but twice. He was born James Donald Bowman and took the surname Hamill from his stepfather before choosing the name Vance to honor his grandmother. He also changed his middle name. So he was born James Donald Bowman, and then he changed it to Hamill, and then he changed it to Vance, and he also changed his middle name from Donald to David. Apparently he didn't like the name Donald. So Russian State TV is hearing all this weird stuff about JD Vance, and they've got some interesting things to say about him. I have to share this. Here's Solyov talking about JD Vance. He is a fun guy. During the convention, he couldn't think of anything better to say than to thank his mama for being sober for 10 years. He pleased his mama. That was questionable, but he speaks well. You just said he was talking about his mama on stage. He doesn't hide other things either. They have easily changed this 39-year-old guy. He suddenly changed his religion. He was an evangelical, but became a Catholic. Soloveyov then says he's still a Christian. Fine, but he easily switched and never explained why. He also changed his sexual preference. In his youth, he loved men, and now he loves women. Perhaps he returned to normalcy. I'm not totally convinced of his love towards Trump and Trumpist policies. Now he chose the name James David Vance as his running mate, a man who changes everything. His name, his religion, his sexual orientation, his views. In 2016, JD Vance called Trump an American Hitler. Now it's his main boss. Of course, this man will change his shoes quickly. He will quickly switch to any side. He has this propensity, a hillbilly ruse. He calculated all of it. He will bring out his wife. She is Asian. His wife is of Indian descent. She is from India. They have 3 kids. A great family man. Here you go. A basic image of modern conservative. Not just modern, but of a whole conservative society in those times when America was great. What Trump is calling for, the 1950s and 1960s. Let's bring all that might. I don't even have to trash talk JD Vance. The Russians are doing it for me. But yeah, it's pretty weird that JD Vance has switched on so many positions. He was evangelical and he switched to Catholicism. He thought he was gay and now he hates the LGBT community. He's changed his name. He thought Trump was Hitler and now he's Trump's running mate. Even though this guy is the most pro-Russian senator today in the United States Senate, that's based on his statements, the Russians don't trust him because he's flipped-flopped on so many issues in the past. I shouldn't laugh. This is all kind of tragic. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Spain announced they're going to send another Hawk anti-aircraft battery system. Thank you so much to the people of Spain. Final couple clips I want to share with you. The first one is a Ukrainian soldier proudly showing off his garden next to his trench. I'm assuming he's on some part of the front lines where he's not under daily attacks, and he had time to build a really nice garden.
Оце українські окопи. Огірочок, петрушка, там салатики, редиска там колись була. Тут ось помідорчик, там цибулька, огурчик, що там, ну, коротше, і так далі, капуста, там цибуля далі не видно. Ну, ось українські окопи. Оце так.
This is the nicest trench garden I have ever seen. I've not seen many trench gardens, but this one's the nicest. Well done. We got time. One more clip. This one's from friend of the channel, Richard Woodruff. He's with Frontline Kits. He was visiting soldiers on the front lines, and he recorded this video because in these trenches, there's lots of animals. Cats and dogs. Cats for the mice, dogs for the companionship. And this is one of the trench puppies that Richard was allowed to meet.
Hey, trench doggo. Hey. Привіт. Доброго ранку. That's my eye. What's your shift day? Tak. Good morning. You're very cute. Дуже багато cute. Так.
That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.